Colorado Territory, 1872. Whiskey Flats was a town where dust claimed everything eventually, hopes, dreams, and the shine on a man's boots. In the harsh light of morning, Beau Mitchell stood at the edge of town, watching as another funeral procession made its way to the small cemetery on the hill. Death was common here, but it never got easier to witness. At 25, Beau had seen more graves dug than most men twice his age. "Ain't you got work to do, Mitchell?" Sheriff Hadley called from the jailhouse porch, spitting tobacco juice into the dirt. "Heading out now, sir," Beau replied, touching the brim of his hat respectfully. The sheriff snorted. "Don't sir me, boy, just keep your head down and stay out of trouble." "God knows you've had enough of that already." Beau's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. 3 years had passed since the incident, yet folks in Whiskey Flats treated him like it happened yesterday. He'd been cleared of all charges, self-defense, the territorial judge had ruled, but in the court of public opinion, Beau Mitchell remained guilty of killing Thomas Wright, son of the wealthiest rancher in the county. As he mounted his dun gelding and rode toward the Triple R where he worked, Beau carried the weight of his conviction. The frontier demanded men be hard and unfeeling to survive. Love, family, connection, these were luxuries that got a man killed. Better to work hard, keep to himself, and expect nothing but the next sunrise. The young cowboy stood a lean 6 feet tall, with shoulders broadened by years of ranch work. His features might have been considered handsome if not perpetually guarded, clear blue eyes that rarely met another's gaze, a strong jawline usually tense with unspoken thoughts. Today a light stubble darkened his face, not yet enough to hide the thin scar that ran along his right cheek, another souvenir from that fateful night. At the Triple R, Beau worked harder than any 2 men combined. Old man Russell tolerated him when other ranchers wouldn't hire him at all. For that, Beau repaid him with unfailing loyalty and backbreaking labor. He broke the wildest horses, rode the longest shifts, and never complained. The other hands kept their distance, which suited him fine. Solitude was safer. Attachment was a risk he couldn't afford to take again. "No man is an island," his mother used to say before the fever took her when he was 16. But out here, a man either was an island or he drowned. Spring arrived with unusual fanfare in Whiskey Flats that year. A stagecoach rolled into town carrying not just mail and supplies, but passengers, something rare enough to draw curious onlookers. Among them was a young woman who stepped down with obvious uncertainty, her honey-blonde hair escaping from beneath a modest bonnet, her traveling dress a deep blue that had somehow managed to stay remarkably clean despite the journey. Beau noticed her from across the street, where he was loading supplies into a wagon. He didn't mean to stare, but something about the determined set of her shoulders, despite her obvious trepidation, caught his attention. "That's Luther Anderson's niece," muttered Jackson, the store clerk loading sacks of flour beside him. "Come all the way from Boston after her parents died. Fever, I heard." Beau nodded without comment and returned to his work. The girl's circumstances were none of his concern. The following Sunday found Beau reluctantly attending church for the first time in months. Old man Russell had insisted all his hands make an appearance for the spring social that followed the service, declaring, "You boys need God and a proper meal," in that order. It was there Beau first heard her name spoken aloud. "Folks, please welcome Miss Lillian Adams, who has come to live with her Uncle Luther and Aunt Martha," Pastor Wilson announced after the service. "She's traveled all the way from Massachusetts to join our community." The young woman stood briefly, offering a nervous smile to the congregation. Up close, Beau could see she was younger than he'd first thought, perhaps 20 or 21, with clear green eyes that surveyed the room with intelligence and a certain wariness. Her blonde hair was pinned up neatly, and she wore a modest yellow dress that complemented her fair complexion. 20 years old and already an old maid by Boston standards, Mrs. Holloway whispered too loudly to her companion. "Poor thing probably couldn't find a husband back east." Beau felt a flash of annoyance at the unkind assessment. The social after church was torture for him, forced conversations and pitying looks from the townspeople who remembered him as a promising young man before the incident. He kept to himself in a corner, nursing a cup of weak coffee and counting the minutes until he could return to the ranch. His solitude was interrupted when Luther Anderson approached, steering his niece toward him. "Miss Adams, this here's Beau Mitchell. Works for Russell, best horsebreaker in the territory," Luther said with exaggerated enthusiasm that immediately put Beau on edge. "How do you do, Mr. Mitchell?" Lillian offered her hand politely. Beau wiped his palm on his trousers before taking it briefly. "Miss Adams." Luther filled the uncomfortable silence that followed. Beau's a man of few words, been through some trouble few years back, but he's steady work. The way Luther emphasized the last part made Beau's skin crawl, like he was being assessed at auction. "Uncle Luther, I believe Aunt Martha is looking for you," Lillian said pointedly, having clearly sensed the discomfort. After Luther departed, she turned to Beau with an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry. My uncle means well, but subtlety isn't his strong suit." "No harm done, Miss Adams." Beau shifted uncomfortably. "If you'll excuse me, I should be getting back to the ranch." As he turned to leave, she spoke again. "It must be wonderful working with horses. I've always found them to be better company than most people." The observation, so aligned with his own thoughts, made him pause. "They judge less," he found himself saying. "And lie never," she added with a small smile. For the first time in years, Beau felt the uncomfortable sensation of his carefully constructed walls being gently probed. He nodded curtly and made his escape, confused by the interaction and determined to forget it. But fate had other plans. 2 weeks later, Beau was breaking a particularly stubborn Mustang in the corral. When a buggy arrived at the Triple R, he paid it no mind until old man Russell called him over. "Mitchell. Got someone here wants to see about lessons." Wiping sweat from his brow, Beau approached the buggy, freezing when he recognized Luther Anderson at the reins, and his niece beside him in a practical riding skirt and white blouse. "Afternoon," Luther called too cheerfully. "Miss Lillian here wants to learn proper riding. Martha thinks it's unseemly, but I say a woman out here ought to know how to handle herself on horseback." "Russell says you're the man for the job." Beau shot a questioning look at his employer, who merely shrugged. "Could use the extra money, boy, and it's not like you've got much else to occupy your Sundays." "I can pay," Lillian said quietly. "I have some savings from my parents." "No need for that," Luther interjected. "Consider it part of your keep with us." Beau understood then. Luther wanted free lessons, and Russell was volunteering Beau's time in exchange for continued goodwill between the ranches. The young cowboy had little choice. Sunday afternoons would work, he said reluctantly, after church. Lillian's face brightened. "That would be perfect, thank you, Mr. Mitchell." As the buggy pulled away, old man Russell clapped him on the shoulder. "Might do you good to talk to someone doesn't have 4 legs, Mitchell. Girl seems nice enough." Beau returned to the corral without responding. This was a complication he didn't need, but orders were orders. He'd teach the girl to ride properly, keep his distance, and that would be that. No good ever came from getting close to people, especially not people connected to the respectable families of Whiskey Flats. The following Sunday, Lillian arrived at the appointed time, dressed for riding and visibly excited despite her attempts to appear composed. "Have you ridden before, Miss Adams?" Beau asked, leading out a gentle mare named Daisy. "Only side saddle and not well," she admitted. "Boston doesn't afford many opportunities for proper riding." "Then we'll start with the basics. Out here, riding isn't for show, it's for survival." For the next hour, he taught her how to approach a horse, how to saddle it properly, and the fundamentals of mounting and sitting correctly. Lillian proved to be an attentive student, asking intelligent questions and showing no fear of the animal. "My father always said understanding comes before mastery," she commented as she adjusted her grip on the reins per his instruction. "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was," a shadow crossed her face. "He was a professor at Harvard. He believed education was the greatest gift one could receive." Beau nodded, unsure how to respond to the personal revelation. "Try walking her around the corral. Gentle pressure with your heels, that's it." As the lessons continued over subsequent Sundays, Beau found himself increasingly impressed by Lillian's determination. She took falls without complaint, listened carefully to his instructions, and improved steadily. Conversation remained largely focused on riding, but occasional personal details slipped through. He learned she had been studying to be a teacher before her parents' deaths. She discovered he had taught himself to read from newspapers and a worn copy of Shakespeare's collected works that had belonged to his mother. "Romeo and Juliet?" she asked with a smile one afternoon as they rested the horses. "Hamlet," he corrected, "found it more honest about human nature." "To be or not to be," she quoted softly. "That is the question," he finished, surprising himself. Something shifted between them that day, a recognition of depths beneath surfaces. It unsettled Beau, who had spent years ensuring no one looked too closely at who he was beneath the taciturn exterior. After their sixth lesson, as Lillian was preparing to leave, Luther arrived unexpectedly to collect her, accompanied by three men Beau recognized as prominent ranchers' sons. James Cooper, William Steele, and Peter Hargrove, the last being Thomas Wright's cousin and no friend to Beau. "How's our little writing student doing?" Luther called too loudly. The men behind him snickered. Lillian's spine straightened. "Quite well, Uncle. Mr. Mitchell is an excellent teacher." "I bet he is," Peter muttered, just loud enough to be heard. Beau's expression hardened, but he said nothing, busying himself with Daisy's saddle. "These gentlemen were hoping to escort you to the Founders' Day dance next Saturday," Luther announced. "Thought we might settle it now, seeing as how they're all so eager for your company." The men exchanged glances that made Beau's stomach turn. This wasn't genuine interest, this was some kind of game. "That's very kind," Lillian replied carefully, "but I haven't decided if I'll be attending." "Course you'll attend," Luther insisted. "Whole town'll be there." "Right, Mitchell." "Wouldn't know, sir, I don't attend town dances." Peter laughed. Some folks wouldn't be welcome anyway. Beau saw Lillian's confusion at the undercurrent, but thankfully she didn't ask for clarification. Instead, she smoothly changed the subject and allowed herself to be led to Luther's wagon, casting one apologetic glance back at Beau. After they departed, Beau's fist connected with the corral post. The whole situation reeked of trouble. Those men weren't interested in Lillian Adams, they were using her as part of some joke, likely at both their expenses, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do about it. By Friday, rumors had spread through Whiskey Flats about a wager concerning Luther Anderson's niece and the Founders' Day dance. Beau overheard fragments in town while picking up supplies, something about which of the three men could convince Lillian to agree to court them, despite her being a bookish spinster. The whole thing turned his stomach, but he had no standing to intervene. Lillian Adams was nothing to him beyond a Sunday writing student, and tomorrow would be her last lesson before the dance. After that, their paths would likely cross only in passing. He told himself it was better this way. Getting involved would only lead to trouble, the kind that had nearly cost him his life 3 years ago. Saturday night, unable to sleep, Beau found himself riding toward town. He had no intention of attending the dance, but some irrational part of him wanted to ensure Lillian wasn't being humiliated by whatever scheme those men had concocted. The town hall glowed with lantern light, music spilling into the street. Beau remained in the shadows, watching couples arrive. He spotted Peter Hargrove and his companions near the entrance, passing a flask between them, their laughter carrying across the night air. When Lillian arrived with her aunt and uncle, Beau hardly recognized her. Her honey-blonde hair was arranged in an elegant updo with a few tendrils framing her face. She wore a dress of deep forest green that complemented her eyes and moved gracefully as she walked. The transformation from practical writing student to refined young lady was striking. The three men immediately converged on her, each offering exaggerated bows and competing for her attention. From his vantage point, Beau could see her polite but reserved responses, keeping each at a careful distance. Good girl, he thought, smart enough to sense something's off. As the evening progressed, Beau remained outside, telling himself he would leave momentarily, yet finding reasons to stay. Through the windows he caught glimpses of Lillian dancing, always maintaining proper distance from her partners, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. Around midnight, he saw Peter Hargrove lead her onto the dance floor for a waltz. Something in the man's demeanor set off warning bells. Peter's hand rested lower on Lillian's back than propriety allowed, and even from a distance, Beau could see her discomfort as she tried to maintain proper space between them. When the dance ended, Peter didn't release her immediately. Instead, he bent to whisper something in her ear that made her face pale. Beau straightened, his body tensing as he watched Lillian pull away and hurriedly exit the hall into the side garden. Without conscious decision, Beau found himself moving toward that same garden, staying in the shadows. He reached the edge in time to hear voices, Peter's slurred with drink, Lillian's tight with controlled anger. "It was just a bit of fun," Peter was saying. "No need to get all high and mighty." "Fun? Betting on which of you could court me as a joke is your idea of fun." Lillian's voice trembled slightly. "Please excuse me, Mr. Hargrove. I'm returning to the dance." "Now wait just a minute." Peter's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. "The bet's still on, and I aim to win. No Boston schoolmarm is going to make a fool of me." Let go of me, Lillian demanded, trying to pull away. Not until. The lady asked you to let go, Beau said quietly, stepping from the shadows. Both turned in surprise. Peter's face darkened with recognition and alcohol-fueled anger. Well, if it isn't the killer cowboy. This ain't your business, Mitchell. I'm making it my business. Beau's voice remained level, but his eyes conveyed clear warning. Let her go, Hargrove. Peter released Lillian's wrist but stepped closer to Beau. Still trying to play hero. Didn't work out so well last time, did it? One right family member in the ground wasn't enough for you. Go back inside, Peter, you're drunk. And you're trespassing. This is a town event, and everyone knows you're not welcome in decent company. Peter's voice rose. What's your interest in Anderson's niece anyway? Think you can court her when no one else would look twice at a man with blood on his hands? Lillian stepped between them. Stop this, both of you. Mr. Hargrove, you're making a scene, Mr. Mitchell was simply intervening in a situation that required it. Defending him now, maybe the rumors about your Sunday writing lessons are true after all, Peter sneered. Beau's control snapped. He pushed Lillian gently aside and grabbed Peter by his fancy waistcoat. Apologize to the lady, now. Beau, don't, Lillian pleaded. It's not worth it. The use of his given name momentarily distracted him, giving Peter the opportunity to shove him backward. Beau maintained his balance but made no move to retaliate, keenly aware that any violence would only reinforce the town's opinion of him. You're right, Miss Adams, Beau said, stepping back. It's not worth it, Mr. Hargrove. I suggest you return to your friends. Seeing the commotion had attracted attention from the hall, Peter straightened his clothing and attempted to salvage his dignity. This isn't over, Mitchell, he muttered before stalking back toward the dance. Once he was gone, Lillian turned to Beau with troubled eyes. You shouldn't have interfered. Now you'll have more problems. Couldn't stand by and watch, Beau shrugged. Are you all right? My pride is wounded more than anything else. She looked away. I suspected something wasn't right with their sudden interest, but I never imagined they'd actually made a wager. How humiliating. The shame is theirs, not yours, Beau said firmly. Lillian studied him in the moonlight. Why were you here? You said you don't attend dances. I don't, he hesitated, then admitted. I heard about their bet, wanted to make sure you were okay. Why would you care what happens to me? The question caught him off guard with its directness. I respect you, he finally said. You work hard at your lessons, you're kind to the horses. You deserve better than being the butt of some cruel joke. Her expression softened. Thank you. That might be the most honest compliment I've received since arriving in Whiskey Flats. She glanced toward the hall. I should return before my aunt and uncle come looking for me. Of course. She took 2 steps, then turned back. Will I see you tomorrow for my lesson? If you still want it. I do. A small smile curved her lips. The company is far better than what I've found at this dance. As she walked away, Beau remained rooted to the spot, a dangerous warmth spreading through his chest, one he hadn't felt in years. He recognized it with alarm as hope and immediately tried to extinguish it. Hope was a luxury he couldn't afford, not with his past, not in this town, and certainly not with a woman like Lillian Adams. The following afternoon brought storm clouds and tension to the Triple R. Beau prepared Daisy for Lillian's lesson, trying to ignore the knot in his stomach. Last night had complicated things. He'd drawn attention to himself, reignited Peter's hatred, and worst of all, created a connection with Lillian that went beyond simple writing instruction. When she arrived, her expression was troubled. We need to talk, she said without preamble, about last night. About what happened after you left. She twisted her gloves in her hands. Uncle Luther was furious when he heard about our encounter in the garden. He forbade me from continuing these lessons. Beau nodded, unsurprised but disappointed nonetheless. I understand. No, you don't, she countered. After breakfast this morning, he changed his mind completely. Not only insisted I come for my lesson, but practically pushed me out the door. She frowned. Something's not right, Beau. He was laughing with Aunt Martha about it. A cold feeling settled in Beau's stomach. When you arrived home last night, were Cooper, Steele, and Hargrove still at the dance? No, they'd left earlier. Why? Before he could answer, hoofbeats approached. 5 riders appeared, Luther Anderson, flanked by the 3 young men from the dance plus Sheriff Hadley. Right on time, Luther called jovially as they dismounted. Told you boys should be here. Lillian turned to her uncle in confusion. What's going on? Luther's smile didn't reach his eyes. Just a bit of business to settle, niece. These gentlemen had a wager, you see. About which of them would court you? I'm aware, Lillian replied coldly. Mr. Hargrove informed me last night. Well, they've decided to change the terms, Luther chuckled. Instead of competing for your attention, they've agreed to let Mitchell here have the honor. Beau's jaw tightened. What game are you playing, Anderson? Sheriff Hadley stepped forward. No game, Mitchell. These boys felt bad about their behavior last night. They want to make amends by stepping aside. You and Miss Adams seem to have developed an understanding anyway. The falseness of it all made Beau's skin crawl. This was a new humiliation for both of them. They were giving Lillian to him as some kind of joke, a cruel punchline that cast him as the town pariah and her as damaged goods no respectable man would want. This is absurd, Lillian said, her voice shaking with anger. I am not a prize to be won or given away. Now, Lillian, Luther soothed, no need to be dramatic. Mitchell here stood up for your honor last night. These boys just want to acknowledge that, right, fellas? The 3 younger men nodded, barely concealing their smirks. This had Peter Hargrove written all over it, a way to humiliate both Beau and Lillian while appearing magnanimous. I'm leaving, Lillian announced, moving toward her horse. Luther blocked her path. Don't be hasty, girl. You're making a scene over nothing. Besides, who else is going to look twice at a 20-year-old spinster with more books than beauty? Mitchell here might be your only chance at not being a burden on Martha and me forever. The cruel words hung in the air. Beau saw something shatter in Lillian's eyes before fury replaced it. How dare you, she whispered. Beau had heard enough. He stepped between Lillian and the men, his voice deadly calm. You've had your fun, gentlemen. Now I suggest you leave my employer's property before this gets ugly. Peter laughed. What are you going to do, Mitchell? Kill another man? That's enough, Sheriff Hadley warned, though without much conviction. We've delivered our message. The lady knows she's welcome to Mitchell's courtship, with the blessing of these fine gentlemen. How generous, Beau replied dryly. Now get off Triple R land. The men mounted up, still chuckling among themselves. Luther was the last to leave, pausing to address his niece. Don't bother coming back tonight, Lillian. Take some time to consider your options. They're limited enough as it is. After they rode away, silence fell between Beau and Lillian. She stood rigid, her hands clenched at her sides, visibly struggling to maintain her composure. I'm sorry, Beau finally said. This is my fault if I hadn't interfered last night. Stop, Lillian turned to face him, green eyes bright with unshed tears. This isn't your fault, it's theirs. They're cruel, petty men who amuse themselves by hurting others. She drew a shaky breath. What I don't understand is why they hate you so much. What happened 3 years ago, Beau? He hesitated, then motioned toward a fallen log near the corral. You might want to sit down. It's not a short story. As they settled on the log, Beau began hesitantly, telling her about a night 3 years prior when he'd been barely 22. He'd been courting a girl named Clara Wright, Thomas Wright's sister. Their relationship had been kept secret because the Wrights were one of the wealthiest families in the territory, and Beau was just a cowhand. One night, Thomas followed Clara when she snuck out to meet me, Beau explained, his voice hollow with the memory. He was drunk, furious that his sister would shame the family by consorting with someone like me. He pulled a gun, said he'd rather see her dead than with me. Lillian gasped softly but didn't interrupt. We struggled for the gun. It went off. Beau's hand unconsciously touched the scar on his cheek. The bullet grazed me, but the second shot, Thomas wasn't so lucky. Self-defense, Lillian murmured. The territorial judge ruled it so, but the Wrights had influence. They made sure everyone in the county knew I'd killed their son, conveniently leaving out why. Clara was sent back east, and I became the killer Cowboy. His mouth twisted bitterly. Peter Hargrove is Thomas's cousin. He's never forgiven me, never believed it wasn't murder. And now they use me to humiliate you further, Lillian said, understanding dawning. By giving me to you like I'm damaged goods, only suitable for a man the town has rejected. And by doing so, they humiliate you as well, Beau finished. two birds, one stone. Lillian stood suddenly, pacing in front of him. My entire life, men have decided my worth based on things beyond my control. My father's position, my mother's family connections, my looks, my age. She turned to him, resolution hardening her features. I won't let them decide this too. What do you mean? I mean, Beau Mitchell, that I refuse to be a punchline in their cruel joke. If they think giving me to you is some kind of punishment or humiliation, then I'll show them how wrong they are. Alarm bells rang in Beau's mind. Lillian, don't do anything rash. They'll eventually lose interest if we just ignore them. No, they won't, she countered. Men like that never stop until they're forced to. I have nothing to lose. My uncle has made it clear I'm unwelcome in his home, and my reputation is already compromised simply by association with you. Which is exactly why you should distance yourself, Beau argued. I'm not worth ruining your life over. Lillian stepped closer, studying him intently. That's what you believe, isn't it? That you're not worth defending, that you deserve the town's condemnation. Her voice softened. Is that why you've isolated yourself these past 3 years? Because you believe their judgment of you is right? The question struck too close to the truth Beau had buried deep within himself. He looked away, unable to meet her searching gaze. You didn't answer me, she pressed gently. A man killed by my hand is still in the ground, he finally said. Nothing changes that. Intent changes everything, Lillian countered. You acted to protect, not harm. She reached out tentatively, her fingers lightly touching his scarred cheek. This town has been cruel to you, Beau, but their cruelty doesn't define your worth. The touch of her hand, warm and gentle against his skin, broke something loose inside him, a longing so intense it frightened him. He stood abruptly, putting distance between them. It's getting late. You should go before it starts raining. Hurt flashed across her face before she masked it with dignity. Of course. But this conversation isn't finished, Beau Mitchell. She gathered her things and mounted her horse with the skill he'd taught her. Thank you for the riding lessons and for the truth. As he watched her ride away, Beau felt as though something vital was leaving with her. The sensible part of him knew it was for the best. Lillian Adams deserved better than to tie her fate to his. But another part, one he'd thought long buried, ached at the loss of possibility. Thunder rumbled overhead, promising the storm would break soon. Appropriate, he thought grimly. The calm in his carefully constructed life had already shattered. For 3 days, rain lashed Whiskey Flats, turning roads to mud and keeping most folks indoors. Beau threw himself into work around the ranch, taking the tasks no one else wanted in the miserable weather. The physical exhaustion helped quiet his mind, which kept returning to Lillian and the touch of her hand against his cheek. On the 4th day, as the rain finally subsided, Old Man Russell approached him in the barn. Letter came for you, he said, holding out an envelope. Boy from town brought it, said it was urgent. Beau took it with mud-stained hands, recognizing Lillian's neat handwriting immediately. He waited until Russell left before tearing it open. Dear Beau, it read, I hope this finds you well despite the weather. I write with news and a request. I've secured a position as the schoolteacher in Whiskey Flats beginning next month. The previous teacher, Mrs. Holloway, is moving to Denver to live with her daughter. This means I will be staying in town regardless of my uncle's wishes. As for the request, the Harvest Festival is this Saturday. I would be honored if you would accompany me. Before you refuse, please know this is not impulsive. I've given it considerable thought. Those men meant to humiliate us both, but perhaps we can turn their cruelty into something better. I understand if you decline, but I hope you won't. Yours sincerely, Lillian Adams. Beau read the letter twice, then carefully folded it and tucked it into his shirt pocket. She was either the bravest or most foolish woman he'd ever met. Appearing at the Harvest Festival together would be a public declaration, a direct challenge to the town's judgment of them both. It would also put a target on her back. As a schoolteacher, her reputation would be scrutinized even more closely. Association with him could cost her the position before she even began, yet she'd signed it, yours sincerely. Those 2 words echoed in his mind as he worked through the day, as loaded with meaning as they were simple. That evening he rode into town, his decision made. He would decline her invitation in person, explain why it was necessary, and then remove himself from her life entirely. It was the only honorable course. He found her at the small boarding house where she'd taken a room after leaving her uncle's home. The landlady, Mrs. Bennett, gave him a suspicious look, but allowed him to wait in the parlor while she fetched Lillian. When Lillian entered, her face brightened with such genuine pleasure that Beau's resolve wavered. She wore a simple blue dress, her honey blonde hair loose around her shoulders, and looked more at peace than he'd seen her since their confrontation at the ranch. "You came," she said simply. "I got your letter." And hope and wariness mingled in her expression. Beau removed his hat, turning it in his hands. "I can't take you to the festival, Lillian." Her smile faded. "I see." "No, I don't think you do." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You've secured a respectable position. Being seen with me would jeopardize that before you even begin." "The school board wouldn't." "I've already spoken to the school board," she interrupted. "I was completely honest about our friendship. They were hesitant, but Mrs. Holloway vouched for my character and qualifications." Beau stared at her in disbelief. "You told them about us." "I told them we were acquainted, that you had taught me to ride, and that I found you to be a man of integrity despite the town's opinion." She lifted her chin defiantly. "I won't build my life here on lies, Beau." "It could still cost you everything," he warned. "Then it will be my choice." She stepped closer. "That's what this is really about, isn't it? Choice. For 3 years, you've let this town choose who you are. You've accepted their judgment because part of you believes you deserve it." "And you don't believe you deserve their judgment," he challenged. "Being associated with the town killer." "I believe in making my own assessments of a person's character," she replied steadily. "And I believe you are a good man who did what was necessary in an impossible situation." Her faith in him was both beautiful and terrifying. It offered a possibility he'd convinced himself was forever lost: redemption, connection, perhaps even love. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly. "Why risk everything for someone you barely know?" Lillian considered the question carefully before answering. "When my parents died, I lost everything familiar. Coming here was meant to be a new beginning, but instead I found myself trapped in the same constraints. A woman valued only for potential marriage, expected to be grateful for any attention regardless of its sincerity." Her eyes met his directly. "With you, I've never felt that. You see me as I am, not as what society expects. You teach me without condescension. You defend me without claiming ownership." She took a breath before continuing. "I'm not naive, Beau. I know attending the festival together will cause talk, but I'm tired of living according to others' judgments, aren't you?" The question hung between them, a challenge and an invitation. For 3 years, Beau had accepted isolation as his due, had believed that separation from others was the price of his past. Lillian was offering another path, one that required courage he wasn't sure he possessed. "I need time to think," he finally said. Disappointment flickered across her face, but she nodded. "The festival begins at noon." "I'll wait until 1 o'clock at the town square." She offered a small smile. "Whatever you decide, I meant what I wrote. I'm honored to know you, Beau Mitchell." As he rode back to the ranch, her words played in his mind. For years he'd built walls to protect himself from further pain, convinced that isolation was safer than connection. But those walls had become a prison, trapping him in grief and guilt as surely as any cell. Could he find the courage to step beyond them? And if he did, what awaited him? Saturday dawned clear and bright, the autumn air crisp with promise. The Triple R hands departed early for town, eager for the festivities, but Beau remained behind, telling old man Russell he needed to finish repairs on the South Corral. "Festival only comes once a year, boy," Russell observed. "Might do you good to remember you're human like the rest of us." Beau hammered a nail with more force than necessary. "Town will enjoy the festival more without me there." The old rancher studied him for a long moment. "Heard about that Anderson girl asking you to escort her. Brave thing for a young lady to do." "Foolish," Beau corrected. "Maybe," Russell shrugged, "or maybe she sees something the rest of those idiots in town don't." He turned to leave, then added over his shoulder, "That fancy pocket watch of your father's still keeps good time." Beau frowned at the non sequitur. "Yes, sir." "Good. Be ashamed to keep a lady waiting because your timepiece was slow." The old man left before Beau could respond, but his meaning was clear enough. As the morning wore on, Beau found himself repeatedly checking the pocket watch, watching the minutes tick inexorably toward noon. At 11:30, he threw down his tools in frustration. This was madness, even if he wanted to go, which he absolutely did not. He was covered in dirt, unshaven, and in no condition to appear in town. At 11:40, he found himself at the water pump, scrubbing his hands and face. At 11:50, he was changing into his one good shirt, cursing himself for a fool. By 12:30, he was on the road to town, his stomach in knots and his mind racing with all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Yet something stronger than fear propelled him forward, perhaps hope, or simply the memory of Lillian's face when she'd said she was honored to know him. The festival was in full swing when he arrived. The town square had been transformed with bunting and hay bales, tables laden with harvest bounty, and a band playing lively tunes for dancing. Children ran laughing between the stalls while adults gossiped and celebrated the season's end. Beau tied his horse at the hitching post and surveyed the crowd nervously. Movement near the gazebo caught his eye. Lillian stood slightly apart from the festivities, her golden hair gleaming in the sunlight, wearing a dress the color of ripe wheat. Even from a distance, he could see she was checking her watch. Before he could move toward her, a figure intercepted her, Peter Hargrove, accompanied by his friends. Beau couldn't hear their words over the music and crowd, but Lillian's body language showed clear discomfort as she tried to step around them. Peter caught her arm, his posture aggressive despite his smile. James Cooper and William Steele flanked him, effectively blocking Lillian from the view of most festival-goers. Anger surged through Beau. Without conscious thought, he was moving through the crowd, reaching the gazebo just as Peter leaned in too close to Lillian. Should have known better than to expect a killer to keep his word, Peter was saying. Seems Mitchell doesn't want you after all. Can't blame him, really. Please excuse me, mister. Hargrove, Lillian replied coolly, though Beau could see the hurt beneath her composed exterior. I have no desire for your company. Now that's not very friendly, Peter drawled, tightening his grip on her arm. Especially when I'm offering to save you from public humiliation. Everyone's watching, wondering why you're standing alone like a wallflower. She's not alone, Beau said quietly, stepping into their circle. Four heads turned in surprise. Lillian's eyes widened, a smile breaking across her face that made Beau's heart stutter. You came, she breathed. I said I needed time to think. He offered a small smile. I've thought. Peter's face darkened. This is a public festival, Mitchell. No place for your kind. My kind, Beau raised an eyebrow. You mean working men, because last I checked this festival is for the whole town. He turned to Lillian, extending his hand. Miss Adams, would you do me the honor of joining me for some lemonade? With quiet dignity, Lillian placed her hand in his. I would be delighted, Mr. Mitchell. As they walked away, Peter called after them, This isn't over, Mitchell. You can't hide behind a woman's skirts forever. Beau felt Lillian's hand tighten on his arm. Ignore him, she murmured. He's trying to provoke you. I know, Beau led her toward the lemonade stand, acutely aware of the stares and whispers following them. I'm sorry I was late. You're here now, she replied simply. That's what matters. They collected their lemonade and found a relatively quiet spot beneath an oak tree at the edge of the square. For a few moments they sipped in companionable silence, watching the festivities. Everyone staring, Beau finally observed. Let them, Lillian shrugged. They'll find something new to gossip about soon enough. You truly don't care what they think. I care about truth, she corrected. And the truth is, you're a good man who has been unfairly judged. If my standing beside you helps others see that, then the discomfort of a few stares is worth it. Her unwavering faith in him was humbling. Why me, Lillian? There must be dozens of men who'd court you properly without all this. He gestured vaguely at the whispering townsfolk. Lillian considered him thoughtfully. When I first arrived in Whiskey Flats, I was lonely and afraid. My parents were gone, my future uncertain. Everyone I met either pitied me or saw me as a potential bride to be assessed like livestock. She smiled softly. Except you taught me to ride without condescension. You spoke to me like my thoughts mattered. You defended me without expecting anything in return. She looked out at the dancing couples. I was given to you as a joke, Beau. But what those cruel men don't understand is that some jokes become blessings in disguise. Her words warmed something long cold within him. For the first time in 3 years, Beau allowed himself to imagine a future beyond mere survival, one that included companionship, perhaps even love. Would you like to dance? He asked suddenly. Surprise flickered across her face. Here, now. Why not? A reckless courage was building in him, fueled by her presence. If we're going to be the talk of the town anyway, might as well give them something worth talking about. Lillian laughed, a sound so full of joy it made heads turn. I would love to dance with you, Beau Mitchell. As he led her to the dance area, the crowd parted like water around stones. The band faltered momentarily before continuing their waltz. Beau placed his hand respectfully at Lillian's waist, took her hand in his, and with more confidence than he felt, began to lead her in the dance. He hadn't danced in years, but his body remembered the steps his mother had taught him long ago. Lillian followed his lead gracefully, her eyes never leaving his face, her smile never dimming despite the stares around them. You dance beautifully, she murmured. My mother insisted I learn, said even cowboys should know how to treat a lady properly. She was right. As they turned about the floor, Beau noticed old man Russell watching from the sidelines, a satisfied smile on his weathered face. Sheriff Hadley stood nearby, his expression unreadable. Luther Anderson glowered from the punch table, while Martha simply looked confused by the spectacle. When the music ended, Beau and Lillian stopped dancing but remained standing together, hands still joined, a united front against the town's judgment. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of simple pleasures, shared apple cider, conversations beneath the oak tree, and 2 more dances as the sun began its descent. With each passing hour, Beau felt lighter, as though years of accumulated guilt and isolation were gradually falling away beneath Lillian's unwavering acceptance. As twilight approached and lanterns were lit around the square, Peter Hargrove and his companions appeared again, clearly having spent the afternoon liberally visiting the hidden flasks that circulated among the men. Well, if it isn't the town killer and his charity case, Peter slurred loudly enough for nearby conversations to halt. Enjoying playing the gentleman, Mitchell. We all know what you really are. Beau tensed but kept his voice level. Go home, Peter, you're drunk. Not drunk enough to forget what you did, Peter sneered. You killed my cousin and got away with it. Now you're parading around with this Boston girl like you deserve a normal life. Lillian stepped forward. Mr. Hargrove, your quarrel is with me, not Mr. Mitchell. I invited him here today. Because you don't know what he is, Peter spat. Ask him how Thomas died. Ask him if he told you the whole truth. I know exactly what happened, Lillian replied steadily. Beau defended himself and a young woman from a drunk with a gun, not unlike the situation developing right now. Peter's hand moved toward his jacket, where Beau knew he carried a pistol. The crowd around them shifted nervously, parents pulling children behind them. That's enough, Hargrove, Sheriff Hadley's voice cut through the tension as he approached. You're causing a disturbance at a public event. He's the disturbance, Peter pointed at Beau. Walking around free after putting a bullet in Thomas. A jury cleared Mitchell, the sheriff reminded him, and right now you're the one making threats. Some things can't be settled by a jury, Peter muttered, his hand still hovering near his jacket. Beau pushed Lillian behind him. This is between us, Peter. Leave her out of it. Too late for that. She chose sides when she chose you. Peter's eyes narrowed. Maybe she needs to learn what happens to people who stand with killers. The implied threat to Lillian snapped something in Beau. In 2 quick strides, he closed the distance between them, grabbed Peter by the shirt front, and lifted him almost off his feet. Threaten her again, Beau said quietly, his voice deadly calm, and we'll find out if you're luckier than your cousin was. Fear flashed across Peter's face before he masked it with bravado. See, the killer shows his true colors. That's enough, Sheriff Hadley physically inserted himself between them. Hargrove, you and your friends are leaving, now. He turned to Beau. Let him go, Mitchell. Don't make this worse. Slowly, Beau released his grip on Peter's shirt and stepped back. The crowd around them had grown, faces showing mixtures of fear, curiosity, and in some, a new uncertainty as they observed the confrontation. Peter straightened his clothes with exaggerated dignity. This isn't over, Mitchell, he slurred as his friends pulled him away. A killer can't outrun his past. After they departed, an uncomfortable silence fell over the gathering. Beau turned to Lillian, whose face was pale but resolute. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I shouldn't have lost my temper. You defended me, she corrected. There's no shame in that. Sheriff Hadley approached them, his expression troubled. Mitchell, I can't stop you attending public events, but I suggest you and Miss Adams consider leaving before this gets uglier. Hargrove's drunk enough to do something stupid. Beau nodded. We were just leaving, Sheriff. As they walked toward the hitching post, the whispers followed them, but something had shifted. Not everyone looked at them with condemnation now. Some faces showed thoughtfulness, others curiosity, and a few, particularly among those who had witnessed Peter's threats, something close to reassessment. "I'll escort you to your boarding house," Beau said as he untied his horse. "Actually," Lillian replied, "I was hoping we might take a longer route. The night is beautiful, and I'm not quite ready for the evening to end." Despite everything, Beau found himself smiling. "As the lady wishes." He helped her mount behind him, trying to ignore the warmth of her arms around his waist as they rode away from town toward the creek that marked the boundary of Triple R land. There, beneath a canopy of stars and a rising moon, they dismounted and walked along the bank. "I'm sorry today didn't go as planned," Beau finally said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "I didn't have a plan," Lillian admitted with a small laugh. "Only hope." "Hope for what?" She stopped walking, turning to face him in the moonlight. "Hope that you would see yourself as I see you. As a man worthy of forgiveness, both from others and from yourself." Her words struck him like a physical blow. For 3 years, he'd carried the weight of Thomas Wright's death like a sentence, believing isolation was his penance for taking a life, even in self-defense. But standing here with Lillian, her face silvered by moonlight and her eyes full of a faith he hadn't earned, that burden suddenly seemed less absolute. "I don't know if I can," he confessed. "Be that man you see." "You already are," she said simply. "You just need to allow yourself to believe it." She reached up, her fingers tracing the scar on his cheek with a tenderness that made his breath catch. "This doesn't define you, Beau. Neither does that night. What defines you are the choices you make each day to be kind, to be honest, to defend rather than destroy." In that moment, with her touch on his face and her words unlocking something long frozen within him, Beau did what he'd been wanting to do for weeks. He leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle at first, almost reverent, but when Lillian's arms wound around his neck, pulling him closer, the kiss deepened into something more profound, a promise, a beginning, a healing. When they finally parted, both breathless, Beau rested his forehead against hers. "I'm afraid," he admitted, "not of Peter or the town, but of disappointing you, of not being the man you believe I am." "I don't expect perfection," she whispered. "Only honesty and the courage to try." As they stood together beneath the stars, Beau felt something he'd thought forever lost: hope. Not just for tonight or tomorrow, but for a future where he might find redemption, where the weight of the past might finally lift, where love could grow in soil he'd thought permanently salted by violence and regret. It wouldn't be easy. Peter Hargrove's threats weren't empty, and the town's judgment wouldn't change overnight. But for the first time in 3 years, Beau Mitchell believed something better might be possible, and that made all the difference. The weeks following the Harvest Festival brought changes to Whiskey Flats. Lillian began her duties as the town's schoolteacher, quickly winning over her students with her genuine interest in their education and her innovative teaching methods. Though some parents initially expressed concern about her association with Beau, her competence and obvious dedication to the children gradually quieted most objections. For Beau, the changes were more subtle but equally profound. Old Man Russell promoted him to foreman after his previous one left for California, a position that required more interaction with merchants and cattlemen in town. Though some still regarded him with suspicion, others, particularly those who had witnessed Peter's behavior at the festival, began treating him with cautious respect. Their courtship proceeded with frontier practicality. Beau called on Lillian at her boarding house on Wednesday evenings and escorted her to church on Sundays, much to the fascination of the town gossips. They took drives in Russell's buggy along the creek, rode together on the open range, and sometimes simply sat on Mrs. Bennett's porch swing, talking until twilight faded to darkness. Throughout it all, Peter Hargrove and his companions maintained a threatening presence, watching from saloon doorways when Beau passed, making loud comments about killers walking free, and once firing shots in the air as Beau rode out of town. Sheriff Hadley warned them repeatedly but took no substantive action, claiming he couldn't arrest men for talking or celebratory gunfire. "He's waiting for something," Beau told Lillian one evening as they walked after church. "Baiting me into throwing the first punch so he can claim self-defense." "Promise me you won't give him what he wants," Lillian said, her hand tightening on his arm. "I promise to try," he replied honestly. "But if he threatens you again?" I can take care of myself, she reminded him with a smile. Mrs. Bennet has been teaching me to shoot. Says a schoolmarm living alone should know how to handle a pistol. The image of proper, bookish Lillian practicing with a six-shooter made Beau laugh despite his concerns. I'd pay good money to see that. Perhaps a private demonstration could be arranged, she teased, bringing a flush to his cheeks that had nothing to do with the autumn chill. As winter approached, Beau found himself contemplating a future he'd never dared imagine, one with Lillian by his side, perhaps children someday, a life built on something more than mere survival. The possibility both exhilarated and terrified him. Did he have the right to such happiness after what had happened? And could he protect Lillian from the consequences of loving a man the town still partially condemned? His answer came unexpectedly on a snowy December evening when he was working late at the ranch. Old man Russell entered the barn, stomping snow from his boots. "Mitchell, you got a visitor." "Lady teacher's waiting in the house." Alarm shot through Beau. Lillian had never come to the ranch unannounced, especially not after dark. Is something wrong? Didn't say, just asked for you with that proper Eastern way of hers. Russell eyed him shrewdly. Been meaning to ask when you're going to make an honest woman of her. Town's been talking for months. Beau felt heat rise to his face. It's not that simple, sir. Never is, Russell agreed. But waiting for simple in this life is a fool's game. He gestured toward the house. Don't keep her waiting in this cold. Beau found Lillian in the ranch house parlor, her cloak still dusted with snowflakes, her cheeks flushed from the cold. She stood when he entered, her expression a mixture of determination and worry. "What's happened?" he asked immediately. "Peter Hargrove came to the schoolhouse today after the children left," she said without preamble. "He was drunk, angry. Said things were coming to a head, and I should choose the right side before it's too late." Anger flared in Beau's chest. "He threatened you." Not directly, but his meaning was clear enough. She stepped closer, taking his hands in hers. "Beau, I'm worried. This obsession of his isn't fading with time, it's growing stronger." "I'll speak to the sheriff," Beau promised, though he had little faith Hadley would take meaningful action. "There's more." Lillian took a deep breath. "The school board called an emergency meeting this afternoon. There have been complaints about my relationship with you." Beau's heart sank. "They're firing you." "No," she said, surprising him. "Actually, several board members defended me. Mrs. Holloway was particularly vocal, saying my personal life was my own business as long as I conducted myself properly and taught the children well." A small smile touched her lips. "It seems we have more allies than we realized." "Then why are you so worried?" Lillian's expression grew serious again. "Because Peter made it clear this vendetta won't end until one of you leaves Whiskey Flats or worse. And I'm afraid of what he might do if pushed further." The implications hung heavily between them. Beau had always known this reckoning would come eventually. The fragile peace they'd built over the past months was just that, fragile, temporary, vulnerable to the hurricane of Peter's hatred and the town's lingering judgment. "I could leave," he said quietly. "Find work elsewhere. You could stay, keep teaching. The town respects you now." Lillian's eyes flashed with sudden anger. "Is that what you want, to run away, to let him win?" "I want you safe," Beau countered. "I want you to have the life you deserve, without my past shadowing every step." "The life I deserve," she repeated. "And who determines that, Beau? You, Peter Hargrove, the town gossips." She shook her head firmly. "No. The life I deserve is the one I choose, and I choose you." The simple declaration left him speechless. After a moment he managed, "Why?" "Because I love you," she said, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Because you are a good man who deserves happiness as much as anyone. Because I want to build a life with you, not despite your past, but including it, all the pain and growth and redemption." Beau felt something crack open inside him, the last barrier he'd maintained against hope, against belief in his own worthiness. In its place rushed a certainty so powerful it nearly overwhelmed him. "Marry me," he said suddenly. Lillian blinked in surprise. "What?" "Marry me," he repeated, taking her hands in his. "Not someday, not when things settle down, now. Soon. I love you, Lillian. I've been afraid to say it, afraid to fully believe I deserve to feel it. But I do love you, more than I thought possible." Joy bloomed across her face, transforming it in the firelight. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." He pulled her into his arms then, kissing her with all the emotion he'd held back for months, the fear, the hope, the love that had grown steadily despite his attempts to guard against it. When they finally parted, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "Whatever comes with Peter, with the town, we'll face it together," he promised. Together, she agreed. Neither could have known how soon that promise would be tested. News of their engagement spread through Whiskey Flats like wildfire. Reactions were predictably mixed, congratulations from some, stony silence from others, and undisguised hostility from Peter Hargrove and his circle. Pastor Wilson agreed to perform the ceremony the following month, though he suggested a small, private affair might be more appropriate given the circumstances. "We won't hide as though ashamed," Lillian had replied firmly. "Anyone who wishes to attend may do so." 2 weeks before the wedding, as Beau was leaving the general store with supplies for the ranch, Peter Hargrove stepped from the saloon across the street, flanked by James Cooper and William Steele. "Heard you're making an honest woman of the school marm," Peter called, his words slightly slurred despite the early hour. "Guess she doesn't mind marrying a killer." Beau ignored him, continuing to load his purchases into the wagon. 3 years of practice had taught him the value of restraint. "I'm talking to you, Mitchell," Peter's voice rose as he crossed the street. "Or are you a coward as well as a murderer?" "Go home, Peter," Beau said without looking up. "You're drunk." "Not too drunk to remember what you did," Peter spat, coming closer. "Not too drunk to wonder if the proper Miss Adams knows what kind of man she's really marrying." Beau turned then, his patience wearing thin. "She knows exactly who I am, more than can be said for the woman you're courting, I'd wager." Peter's face darkened. "At least I didn't have to kill a man to get a woman's attention." "No, just humiliate one publicly," Beau retorted, thinking of the harvest festival. "Very gallant." "You think you're so much better," Peter sneered, "walking around like you've paid your dues, like you deserve forgiveness. Some things can't be forgiven, Mitchell. Some debts can only be paid one way." The threat was barely veiled, but Beau refused to rise to the bait. "I'm not looking for trouble, Peter." "Too bad," Peter replied, "because trouble's found you anyway." Without warning, he shoved Beau hard against the wagon. The suddenness of the attack caught Beau off guard, and he stumbled before catching himself. By then a small crowd had gathered, watching the confrontation with wary interest. "Hit me," Peter taunted, shoving him again. "Come on, killer. Show everyone what you really are." Beau held his ground, hands deliberately at his sides. "I'm not fighting you, Peter." "Because you know I'm right," Peter laughed bitterly. "You know you don't deserve that woman or any kind of happiness in this town. You should be in the ground beside Thomas." The mention of Thomas, Wright's name hung in the air between them. Beau saw something dangerous flash in Peter's eyes, a recklessness born of grief and alcohol and years of nurtured hatred. "Let it go, Peter," Beau said quietly. "It won't bring Thomas back." "No," Peter agreed, his hand moving toward his jacket. "But it might balance the scales." Before Peter could draw his pistol, Sheriff Hadley's voice cut through the tension. "That's far enough, Hargrove." All heads turned to see the sheriff approaching, his hand resting on his own weapon. "I told you last time, no more threats in my town." Peter's hand stilled, but his expression remained murderous. "This isn't over, Mitchell," he muttered. "Wedding day's coming. Be a shame if something happened to ruin it." The implied threat to Lillian sent a chill through Beau's veins. As Peter and his friends retreated toward the saloon, Beau turned to the sheriff. "He's getting worse," Beau observed. "One of these days, words won't be enough for him." Sheriff Hadley sighed heavily. "I know, but until he does something I can arrest him for, my hands are tied. And if that something involves Lillian getting hurt." "It won't come to that," the sheriff assured him, though his eyes held doubt. "I'll keep a closer watch on him." Beau wasn't reassured. As he drove the wagon back to the Triple R, Peter's threat echoed in his mind. The wedding was just 2 weeks away. Whatever Peter was planning, Beau knew the confrontation was coming soon, and this time words wouldn't be enough to stop it. The wedding day dawned clear and cold, a fresh blanket of snow covering Whiskey Flats in pristine white. At the Triple R, Beau dressed with uncharacteristic care in a new suit purchased specifically for the occasion, old man Russell offering gruff advice about marriage as he helped Beau with his tie. Been married 40 years before my Sarah passed, the old rancher reminisced. Secret is knowing when to stand firm and when to bend. Most men get that backwards. Yes, sir, Beau replied, too nervous to fully absorb the wisdom. Stop fretting, Russell chided. Girl loves you, rest is just details. In town, Lillian prepared in her room at the boarding house, assisted by Mrs. Bennet and several of her female students who had begged to help their teacher on her special day. Her dress was simple but elegant, cream-colored satin with lace accents, ordered from Denver at considerable expense. You look beautiful, Miss Adams, breathed 8-year-old Mary Collins as she carefully arranged flowers in Lillian's honey-blonde hair. Thank you, Mary, Lillian smiled at the girl's reflection in the mirror, and after today, you'll have to start calling me Mrs. Mitchell. The thought sent a warm glow through her despite the butterflies in her stomach. In just a few hours, she would be Beau's wife. After months of enduring whispers and judgment, today they would stand before the town and declare their commitment to each other. The church was more crowded than either Beau or Lillian had dared hope. Old man Russell and his ranch hands occupied several pews, as did many of Lillian's students and their families. Even Sheriff Hadley sat near the back, his presence both a personal gesture and a precautionary one given Peter Hargrove's recent threats. Of Peter himself there was no sign, a fact that both relieved and unsettled Beau as he stood at the altar waiting for his bride. The doors at the back of the church opened, and the congregation rose as Lillian appeared, radiant in her cream dress, carrying a small bouquet of winter greens and dried flowers. As she walked toward him, escorted by Mrs. Bennet in place of the family who had rejected her, Beau felt a sense of wonder that this remarkable woman had chosen him despite everything: the town's judgment, Peter's threats, his own doubts about his worthiness. When she reached him, her green eyes shining with love and certainty, Beau found the peace he'd been seeking for 3 long years. Whatever came after today, they would face it together. Pastor Wilson began the ceremony with traditional solemnity. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today in the sight of God to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. The words washed over Beau as he held Lillian's hands in his, focusing on her face, on this moment of perfect clarity amidst years of doubt and isolation. They exchanged vows with steady voices, promising to love and cherish each other through whatever life brought their way. When Beau slipped the simple gold band onto Lillian's finger, his mother's ring, carefully preserved all these years, he felt a sense of rightness, of coming home after a long journey. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Pastor Wilson declared. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder. You may kiss your bride. The kiss they shared was brief but tender, mindful of their audience yet full of promise for the future they would build together. As they turned to face the congregation as Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, the church doors burst open with a bang that echoed like a gunshot. Peter Hargrove stood in the doorway, visibly drunk, his coat dusted with snow. Am I too late for the festivities? He slurred. The congregation froze in collective shock. Sheriff Hadley rose from his seat, hand moving to his weapon. This is a church service, Hargrove, he warned. Show some respect or leave. Peter ignored him, staggering down the aisle toward the altar. Just wanted to offer my congratulations to the happy couple, he said with exaggerated politeness. The schoolmarm and the killer, perfect match, don't you think? Beau stepped slightly in front of Lillian, shielding her with his body. You're drunk, Peter. Go home before you do something you'll regret. Regret? Peter laughed harshly. Only thing I regret is not putting you in the ground when I had the chance. His hand moved toward his jacket, where Beau knew he carried his pistol. Maybe I can fix that now. Before Peter could draw, Sheriff Hadley was between them, his own weapon already out. That's enough, Hargrove, you're under arrest for disturbing the peace and threatening bodily harm. Peter's bloodshot eyes darted between the sheriff's gun and Beau. For a moment, it seemed he might still reach for his weapon, but then his shoulders slumped in defeat. You can't protect him forever, Sheriff, Peter muttered as Hadley took his arm. Sooner or later, justice catches up to everyone. As the sheriff led Peter away, a murmur ran through the stunned congregation. Pastor Wilson, visibly shaken, attempted to regain control of the situation. Let us proceed to the reception at the hotel dining room, he announced with forced cheer, where we can properly celebrate Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell's union. Beau turned to Lillian, whose face was pale but composed. Are you all right? He asked softly. Yes, she assured him, though her hands trembled slightly in his. He can't hurt us, Beau. Not today. But as they walked down the aisle together, accepting cautious congratulations from the wedding guests, Beau couldn't shake the feeling that Peter's appearance was not a final confrontation, but a prelude, a warning of something worse to come. The reception passed in a blur of well-wishes and wedding cake, with no further disruptions thanks to Peter being secured in the town jail. As evening approached, Beau and Lillian prepared to depart for the small cabin old man Russell had given them as a wedding gift, a cozy structure near the creek on Triple R land, private enough for newlyweds yet close enough to town for Lillian to reach the schoolhouse easily. "Are you ready, Mrs. Mitchell?" Beau asked as he helped her into the decorated buggy that would take them to their new home. "I've been ready since the day I met you," she replied with a smile that warmed him despite the winter chill. They were halfway to the cabin when Beau noticed the glow in the distance, an unnatural light that could only be fire. His heart froze as he realized it was coming from the direction of their new home. "Beau," Lillian's voice was tight with alarm as she followed his gaze. "Is that?" "Stay here," he ordered, pulling the buggy to a stop and grabbing the rifle he'd stowed beneath the seat. "Lock the doors after I'm gone." "I'm coming with you," she insisted. "Lillian, please." "We face everything together," she reminded him firmly. "That was our promise." There was no time to argue. Helping her down from the buggy, Beau led her carefully toward the cabin, keeping to the shadows of the trees that lined the creek. As they drew closer, their worst fears were confirmed. The cabin was engulfed in flames, the fire spreading rapidly through the dry timber. "Peter," Lillian whispered, her voice breaking. "He must have done this before coming to the church." Beau nodded grimly. The timing made sense: set the fire, then disrupt the wedding, ensuring maximum pain with his vindictive gesture. A movement near the burning structure caught Beau's attention, a figure watching the flames from the shelter of a large oak. Even in the flickering firelight, Beau recognized James Cooper, one of Peter's friends. "Stay here," Beau whispered to Lillian, handing her the rifle. "If anyone approaches, fire a warning shot." Before she could protest, he moved silently through the trees, circling behind Cooper, who remained transfixed by the burning cabin. In one swift movement, Beau grabbed him from behind, spinning him around and pinning him against the oak. "Why?" Beau demanded, his voice deadly quiet. "Why destroy our home?" Cooper's eyes widened with fear. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. Peter just wanted to scare you, teach you a lesson." "By burning down our cabin on our wedding day." Beau tightened his grip on Cooper's coat. "Where is he?" "Jail," Cooper stammered. "Sheriff arrested him at the church, remember?" "And left you to finish the job," Beau surmised. "Watch it burn, make sure it was destroyed." "I swear I didn't know he was going to do this," Cooper protested. "He just said to meet him here after dark, that we were going to play a prank on you. When I got here, the cabin was already on fire. Peter was supposed to come after the wedding, but then he never showed up." A cold realization dawned on Beau. Peter had never intended to simply disrupt the wedding. That was a distraction. He'd known he would likely be arrested, which meant, "Where's Steele?" Beau demanded suddenly. "Where's William Steele?" Cooper's face went slack with confusion. "I don't know. He was supposed to meet us here too." A rifle shot cracked through the night air, followed by Lillian's voice calling Beau's name. Shoving Cooper aside, Beau ran back toward where he'd left her, fear clutching at his heart. He found Lillian standing with the rifle raised, facing William Steele, who had his hands partially raised in surrender. "He tried to grab me," Lillian explained, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. "Said Peter sent him to finish what they started." Steele glared at them both. "Should have known you'd be too weak to do what needed doing, Cooper," he spat as James emerged from the trees. "Peter was right. If you want something done properly, you have to do it yourself." "It's over, Steele," Beau said firmly. "The cabin's destroyed. You've made your point. Leave us be." "That's where you're wrong, Mitchell," Steele replied, his eyes glittering with malice. "The cabin was just the beginning. Peter's been planning this for months, waiting for the perfect moment to make you pay for Thomas. Your wedding day seemed fitting." "Pay how?" Lillian demanded, the rifle still trained on Steele. A cruel smile twisted Steele's face. "By taking from you what you took from the Wrights, a life for a life." The implication sent ice through Beau's veins. This wasn't just about property damage or threats. Peter had orchestrated a murder, with Beau as the intended victim. "Lillian, get to the buggy," Beau ordered quietly. "Ride to town, find the sheriff." "I'm not leaving you," she insisted. This has gone far enough, Cooper interjected, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Peter's in jail, the cabin's destroyed. Let's just call it done. Peter anticipated jail, Steele countered. That's why he has us, to finish what he started. His hand moved slowly toward his coat. Don't, Beau warned, stepping in front of Lillian despite the rifle she still held. Or what, Steele taunted. You'll kill me too, prove to everyone what Peter's been saying all along. In that moment of tension, none of them noticed the approaching hoofbeats until Sheriff Hadley's voice cut through the night. Drop your weapons, Steele, now. All heads turned to see the sheriff riding toward them, his pistol drawn. Behind him, several men from town followed, including Old Man Russell and, surprisingly, Luther Anderson. Steele hesitated, clearly calculating his chances. With a curse, he slowly raised his hands. This isn't over, he muttered as Sheriff Hadley dismounted and approached. Actually, I think it is, the sheriff replied, disarming Steele and securing his wrists with handcuffs. Peter Hargrove confessed everything after I locked him up. Seems drunk men have loose tongues. He looked at the burning cabin with regret. Sorry we didn't get here in time to save your home. How did you know where to find us? Lillian asked. Russell suspected something was wrong when he saw the fire from town, Hadley explained. And Luther here. He nodded toward Lillian's uncle, who stood awkwardly at the edge of the group, overheard Cooper and Steele talking in the saloon earlier. He came to me right after Peter's arrest. Luther stepped forward, his expression a mixture of shame and determination. I've done you wrong, niece, he admitted gruffly. Let my pride in what others might think cloud my judgment. He glanced at Beau. When I heard what these men were planning, I couldn't stand by, no matter my personal feelings. Lillian regarded her uncle with cautious surprise. Thank you for coming forward, she said simply. As Cooper was also taken into custody and the men from town organized to contain the fire, preventing it from spreading to the surrounding trees, Beau and Lillian stood together watching their wedding gift burn to ashes. I'm sorry, Beau said quietly, about the cabin, about all of this. Lillian leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. It's just a structure, Beau, we can rebuild. And if Peter tries again, or someone else who believes I should still be punished for Thomas's death. She turned to face him fully, her green eyes reflecting the dying flames. Then we face it together as we promised. This is our home, Beau. Whiskey Flats, the Triple R, wherever we build our life. We won't be driven away by hatred or fear. As he looked at his wife, standing strong despite everything they'd endured that day, Beau felt a certainty settle over him. The past would always be with him, but it no longer defined him. What defined him now was this moment, this woman, and the future they would build together from the ashes of what had been destroyed. Together, he agreed, taking her hand in his. Spring came early to Whiskey Flats in 1873, bringing with it renewal and unexpected changes. Peter Hargrove, James Cooper, and William Steele had been tried and sentenced for arson and conspiracy to commit murder, their imprisonment removing a festering wound from the community. In their absence, the town seemed to exhale, as though a poison had been gradually leached from its system. For Beau and Lillian Mitchell, spring brought the completion of their new home, a sturdy cabin built on the same spot as the one destroyed on their wedding night, but larger and more carefully constructed. The entire Triple R crew had helped with the building, and even some townspeople had contributed labor or materials, including, surprisingly, Luther and Martha Anderson. It's not much, Luther had said gruffly as he delivered a handcrafted dining table, but Martha thought you might need it. The gesture, while small, represented a thawing in the frozen relationship between Lillian and her relatives, a slow process of reconciliation built on mutual respect rather than obligation. The town's attitude toward Beau had shifted as well. The dramatic events of the wedding day had forced many to reconsider their judgment of him, particularly when contrasted with Peter's unrepentant hatred. While not everyone embraced him warmly, the open hostility had largely faded, replaced by a tentative acceptance. On a warm Sunday in May, as Beau and Lillian walked home from church, Old Man Russell caught up with them, his weathered face unusually serious. Need to talk to you, Mitchell, he said without preamble. Been putting it off but can't any longer. Concern flickered across Beau's face. Something wrong at the ranch. Ranch is fine, it's me that's not, Russell sighed heavily. Doctor says my heart's giving out, might have a year, might have less. I'm so sorry, Lillian said, her hand finding Russell's arm in sympathy. The old rancher shrugged, lived longer than most in these parts, not complaining. He fixed his gaze on Beau. Need to settle my affairs while I still can. Got no family left, no children to leave the Triple R to. Beau nodded, understanding the practical concerns of a man facing mortality. Whatever you need, sir. What I need, Russell said firmly, is someone to take over the ranch when I'm gone. Someone who knows the land, cares for it proper. Someone I trust. He paused significantly. Been watching you these past years, Mitchell. Way you handle the men, the cattle, the books. Way you stand by your principles even when it costs you. Beau stared at his employer in confusion, not quite comprehending what the old man was suggesting. I'm leaving you the Triple R, Russell stated plainly. You and your wife, papers are already drawn up with the lawyer in town. Shock rendered Beau momentarily speechless. The Triple R was one of the most prosperous ranches in the territory, over 5,000 acres of prime grazing land, hundreds of head of cattle, a legacy built over decades. I can't accept that, sir, Beau finally managed. It's too much, surely there's family somewhere. None that ever cared to know me, Russell cut him off. Made my choice, Mitchell, unless you're telling me you don't want it. Of course he wants it, Lillian interjected, seeing her husband's struggle. We're just overwhelmed by your generosity, Mr. Russell. The old rancher's face softened. You two have earned some good fortune after everything. Besides, he added with a sly smile, that little one you're expecting will need somewhere to grow up. Lillian's hand flew to her still flat stomach in surprise. How did you? Been around long enough to recognize the signs, ma'am, Russell chuckled. Congratulations to you both. As the old man walked away, leaving them to absorb his news, Beau turned to Lillian with wondering eyes. Is it true? Are we? She nodded, her face glowing with joy. I was waiting for the right moment to tell you. I only confirmed it with the doctor yesterday. Beau pulled her into his arms, mindful of curious eyes from churchgoers still milling about the town square. A baby, he whispered against her hair. Our baby. And a ranch, she added with a laugh. Quite a lot for one Sunday. As they continued their walk home, hand in hand under the spring sunshine, Beau marveled at how completely his life had transformed in less than a year. From isolated pariah to husband, expectant father, and soon-to-be owner of one of the territory's finest ranches, all because one brave woman had refused to accept the town's judgment of him. Do you ever regret it, he asked suddenly, choosing me despite everything? Lillian stopped walking, turning to face him with those clear green eyes that had first captured his attention at the church social so many months ago. Never, she said simply, not for a single moment. Even when our home was burning on our wedding night, he pressed, even when the town was whispering behind your back. Especially then, she replied firmly. Because that's when it mattered most. Anyone can stand by someone when it's easy, Beau. True love shows itself in fire and storm. He kissed her then, not caring who might see or what they might think. The opinions of others no longer defined him, not since Lillian had shown him how to see himself through her eyes instead. That evening, as they sat on the porch of their new cabin watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in gold and crimson, Lillian rested her head on Beau's shoulder, her hand entwined with his. What shall we name the baby? She asked dreamily. If it's a boy, perhaps Thomas. Beau tensed slightly, surprised by the suggestion. Thomas, after. As a way of honoring what happened, she explained gently. Not to dwell in the past, but to acknowledge that without that tragedy, we might never have found each other, to transform something painful into something beautiful. The idea was so perfectly Lillian, compassionate, wise, seeing redemption where others saw only loss, that Beau felt his throat tighten with emotion. Thomas Mitchell, he said softly, testing the name, and if it's a girl. Hope, Lillian suggested without hesitation, because that's what you've given me and what I hope we've given each other. Hope Mitchell, Beau agreed, his arm tightening around his wife's shoulders as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. It's perfect. As night settled over the Colorado territory, bringing with it the promise of tomorrow and all the tomorrows after that, Beau Mitchell finally allowed himself to believe fully in the future they were building, a future where love had conquered isolation, where redemption had overcome judgment, where hope had triumphed over despair. Once rejected by all, the cowboy now stood tall, no longer alone but surrounded by love, respected by his community, and looking forward to the legacy he and Lillian would create together in this wild, beautiful land they called home.